have been positive. Gabe Gutierrez, we'll check back with you now here on set. In our big election headquarters, we have Jason Johnson, a SiriusXM contributor and politics editor at TheRoot.com, as well as a Republican strategist, O'Brien Murray. Good morning, gentlemen.
Good morning, Ari.
Let's kick it off with what we saw, which was with the Rubio department. We just showed those beautiful homemade robot costumes, but it wasn't just the robotics, and we can get to the repetition. It was also Chris Christie, who had been playing a sort of a fantasy football all week, saying, I would tell Marco this, and I would tell him that, and ask him this, and then he got to do it. Let's look at Chris Christie on Marco Rubio. I want to get your responses on the return. Here it is.
Marco Rubio is a gifted politician, and he may have the skills to be a president of the United States. But we've tried it the old way with Barack Obama, with soaring eloquence, and we didn't get a leader. We got someone who wants to divide the country up.
You shouldn't compare yourself to Joe Biden, and you shouldn't say that that's what we're doing. Here's exactly what we're doing. You have not been involved in a consequential decision where you had to be held accountable. You just simply haven't. Fact is, when you talk about Hezbollah Sanctions Act that you list as one of your accomplishments and just did, you weren't even there to vote for it. That's not leadership, that's truancy.
O'Brien, what do you think of Christie's efficacy here with New Hampshire voters?
Well, I think it wasn't just Christie. It was all the governors ganging up on him. It was a three-man versus one-man type situation, I think, here. So the question is, how do the voters think he handled himself overall? Early on in the debate, it was tougher. It was the robotics, as you've been saying, and repetition. Normally, candidates stand on message is a good thing, but also for the next 3 quarters of the debate, everybody said he did fantastic. So what are the voters going to, the undecided voters really, going to take away from this debate?
This shows me that this sort of establishment dream that all the establishment candidates are going to join, like the Power Rangers around Marco Rubio, and he's somehow going to be able to take out Cruz and Trump. It's not going to happen. These guys aren't about to quit. I don't think it changed the dynamics of the race at all, but I do think if Rubio was actually going to surge in New Hampshire, it might have blunted that surge a bit. We
also saw this exchange on eminent domain with Donald Trump, who has basically used this. This is takings law. This is the fact that sometimes you get in a situation where public or even private programs take people's property, and yes, they get money back, but if anyone's ever bought a home and you imagine someone wants to put a road nearby and they take your whole home, people don't like that. So I want to play and get your response on the return. This is back and forth with Trump, who's been accused by Republicans of using this for business interests. Let's look at that.
But without eminent domain, you don't have roads, highways, schools, bridges, or anything.
What Donald Trump did was use eminent domain to try to take the property of an elderly woman on the Strip in Atlantic City. That is not public purpose. That is downright wrong. And here's the problem with that.
All right, okay.
The problem was it was to tear down. It was to tear down.
He wants to be a tough guy. He wants to be a tough guy tonight.
It was to tear down
I didn't take the property.
And the net result was you tried.
I didn't take the property. The woman ultimately didn't want to do that.
That is not true.
And
the simple fact is, to turn this into a limousine parking lot for his casinos is not a public use.
He wants to be a tough guy. A lot of times you'll have, and it doesn't work very well with
How tough is it to take property from an elderly woman?
Let me talk. Quiet.
How tough is it?
A lot of times, that's all of his donors and special interests out there.
I've been spending a lot of time out on the street, not in my hotel room, but I haven't seen the picture yet of that little house in front of the big casino. I'm sure this next couple of days we might be seeing that.
Yeah.
The reality is, in New Hampshire, live free or die. I mean, that will resonate with the voters here at this point if there's money behind it and the voters get to see what the real story is against Trump in that.
Well, and here was Trump having skipped the last debate basically because he didn't like the rules.
Right.
He didn't like the moderator because there was someone in the press, which he and many derided this season, but someone who actually stood up to him. Megyn Kelly, I've said before, has conducted herself admirably against a barrage of attacks and sexism. So what did he do? He went home. He went home like a little, loser, a loser who couldn't handle it. Then he comes back last night, and what happens? He gets booed several times. Is some of the Donald Trump facade cracking, in your view?
I don't think so, Ari, and I didn't think that after what happened in Iowa. As far as I'm concerned, this is a guy who didn't spend much money, didn't have a lot of people on the ground, basically, skipped the last debate. He pretty much rested his starters for 2 weeks and still came in second place. That is something that Trump and a lot of the Trump people I spoke to, they're still excited about. He is going to get attacked now because there's someone else who looks like they could win, whether that's Marco Rubio in your eyes or Ted Cruz. But this was just more the same with Trump. And I actually think when he connected eminent domain to the Keystone Pipeline, it was a pretty good response.
I thought that was smart because he found something that Republicans do like, and an example where if you want to build a straight line, you are going to have to sooner or later do some of this, takings, however unpopular it is. But on the booing, I mean, it is different. He hasn't been booed before, and then he tries to say, oh, well, these are all just donors, which is the type of counterattack he's used before. And the RNC quickly put out to Katie Tur at NBC, actually, no, 9 out of 10 of these people were not donors.
I was in the audience last night. I was in the live audience.
Are you a billionaire donor? You need to tell us something.
I am not a billionaire donor. No.
Breakfast is on you.
And I was in Las Vegas too, and I didn't get the tickets from donors.
Right.
But what I noticed last night was the crowd was much more against Trump from the beginning. It was a very different audience up here in New Hampshire than you had in Las Vegas, which is where you'd think the donors would have been in Las Vegas at that point.
And you were there. Your view was it felt like a grassroots New Hampshire voter crowd for the most part?
It was. I mean, there were students there from the college. There was grassroots people. There was people from throughout the state of New Hampshire and the region. So I don't know where he was getting that from, but that was Donald in his defensive.
Well, I don't even care where he was getting it from. It was wrong, right? Yeah. So either it was deliberately wrong or it was accidentally wrong. Again, on a point of, oh, he needs to defend himself, so he attacks the audience. Does that play well in New Hampshire?
It's Donald. I don't think it does. It didn't play well in Iowa. The other thing Donald doesn't have right now, what I've heard in New Hampshire right now, is a ground game. You know, I went to the headquarters yesterday, a number of headquarters. I sat here last night talking to a couple that drove here from New York and couldn't get anything as far as what to do to help out Donald Trump on the ground game.
We're going to dig into that more because I was speaking to an AP reporter who interviewed him just Friday, and he said he didn't realize you needed to have a voter turnout program in campaigning, although, of course, he said he's very smart and he'll learn from his advisors. Hasn't learned that point yet, and it may be an important one Tuesday. Both of you will be with us back later this hour. Now, I want to tell you about Bernie Sanders. Well, he was a long way from here last night, and he had